All right, so this one ruffled a lot of feathers. This video came out about 2 months ago now. Initially, I was mostly concerned and interested to hear about all the heinous shit that involves edgelord. Recently, I was in a conversation with someone who will be unnamed, and they wanted my take on it because I'm involved in this space. So I go over to Slap, type in Gifted Hater's name, and wanted to see what other people were saying, and a lot of thoughts over there. It's kind of what sparked me wanting to make this video. So I will give credit where credit's due. The Slap portion will be at the later half of this video. We'll see if I can strike fame again by ending up on Joe's stream again, because that went so well the first time. And I fear of like being misunderstood through that.
Oh
So
my God.
if I like talk slower or anything, or like pause, like that's what.
Pussy! Come on, Dale! Pussy clot. You're setting yourself up for failure right now, dude.
I'm going to share some thoughts on this portion only, and then I'm going to go over to Slap. We're going to read some of these takes over there.
So get a drink. Let's sit back. I've got a sunset iced tea thing from It's Boba Time. I've selected 5 skaters here. Costin, P-Rod, Tony Cock, Reynolds, the boss, and then Gino Iannucci.
I'm also going to do a special segment on Jason Ellis.
Now, not all of these guys are guilty of the same...
He's got user 00 up over here. That's funny.
crime. Some,
I didn't notice this at first. That's funny.
Yeah, idiot. Something else you also didn't notice is that is Costin. The meme is Costin. Dumbass.
We're putting them in the dungeon for a week. Others, they're getting the nipple clamps permanently attached to them. Skateboarding and skateboarders are getting older, and that is making it less attractive.
Yeah, I also didn't fucking notice that I was covering Joa's face. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. If you click off, I will not be offended. It's probably deserved, actually.
If kids are going to the skate shop or Barnes and Noble and they're picking up a Thrasher magazine and they see Andrew Reynolds doing a fucking kickflip wall ride on it, it doesn't look very cool, does it? You don't want to really say anything mean about Reynolds or whatever, but what is this really? Because Andrew Reynolds being 50 on the cover of Thrasher doing a wall ride. Obviously, the reason that he's on the cover of Thrasher is because he had a new shoe coming out. What do you think it looks like to people? It looks like the cover of Thrasher is for sale. I don't know if New Balance bought it, didn't buy it.
All right,
whatever.
we're gonna pause there. It's just not surprising that if the cover of Thrasher can be bought, I'm okay, yeah, I'm not surprised, because it's fucking capitalism. You know what I mean? None of that fucking surprises me. Especially when skateboarding's in a low slump, like it supposedly is right now. Okay, so since it's been a month and a half too, a lot of people pulled up the argument about Jerry's Dark Slide to promote the sci-fi video. And I saw a handful of people on Slap. Maybe we'll give credit later when we go over there. But one person was arguing that the Dark Slide is an Ender clip and Reynolds' kickflip wall ride isn't. I do agree that the Dark Slide is more of a difficult trick. Jerry Asu's older, Reynolds is older, so they deserve all their flowers for everything those two dudes have done for the industry. But I don't see much difference between those two covers. I feel like Jerry's trick was a dope photo. It was a dope trick, and I mean, I don't know. I'm not pissed off that Reynolds is on the cover. Also, it could be a slow month for skateboarding. But the one thing that I will say too, so the issue with that is if New Balance did buy, and maybe he'll go in to say this. I only watched this video once. I'll let it play here in a second. If New Balance did buy the cover to put Reynolds on it, that does suck, because that is taking up space for maybe a young gun who fucking did something super sick that month, whatever, and they could have been in the spot that Reynolds was in, but because New Balance paid for it, they didn't get the shine, Who knows? My only take is I'm not surprised. So what I will say in defense of Jerry's cover is that Sci-Fi, even though it is one of the biggest IT brands right now, it is still a smaller brand. And not that I think that they would be doing Jerry any favors, nor that he needs a favor. I would argue that it is an appropriate cover, given that the sci-fi video was coming out, and not to mention the sci-fi video was free on YouTube. You didn't have to pay for it. As to where if Reynolds' cover is paid for by New Balance to push the shoe, that's a different story.
But like, this is like standard now. If you are a pro skater and you skate for a big shoe brand and you have a shoe coming out, then you kind of just get on the cover of Thrasher. We just saw it with Current Cables as well. I don't think that's what Thrasher is supposed to be. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Thrasher is supposed to showcase the best skateboarding that happened that month, and the coolest photo goes on the front, not the photo that will maximize New Balance shoe sales. I don't think that that is supposed to be what you guys are there for. It seems like the strategy now is to play it as
I agree.
safe as possible. I don't think that's what skateboarding is about. I like Current Cables, for example. He just got a shoe, but that shoe is like 3 shoes combined as a new shoe. Like, skateboarding shoes right now are like the fucking car market, where every car is like the same as every other car and it's all combined and shitty.
Dude, let me add to that. Every fucking like car, SUV, truck now, every one of them is trying to look like a Bronco, like the new Bronco. I hated the way the new Bronco looked at first, but I get the point, that the comparison there, you know, it's like, why does everything need to look like a fucking Bronco?
And bulbous and gray. I think that if the shoe brands had the mentality
I just realized something. I'm literally covering Joe's face, dude. That's fucking hilarious. All right, we'll let him. It looks like I'm fucking literally. Oh my God, Jesus Christ. Whatever. We'll move myself up there.
I think that if the shoe brands had the mentality today in like the late 2000s, there would be no Janowski, because that would have been too crazy. That would have been too off the wall. That would have been seen as too great a risk.
Oh.
Yeah, I think skateboarding.
So I mean, the thing with the Janowski, oh my God, dude, I might be butchering this story, and maybe I should fucking pause the recording on this and dive into it. But Nike didn't want to make Janowski's shoe what it was. They wanted something else, and I'm pretty sure, fucking fact check me on it, don't come for me for this, I'm pretty sure he insisted on that being his shoe, and they thought it was gonna flop. They didn't think it was gonna do well. He insisted on that being his shoe. They thought it was gonna flop, and it fucking crushed it. They did want to play it safe.
Currently grappling with the
Ooh, grappling. He's talking about grappling with Gino when Gino was wearing the headgear for the ASICS ad. Man, I know he like really goes in on Gino here, but I mean, I think it's sick that Gino's on ASICS. I mean, I'm not really concerned about like the lackluster clips. I was just fucking hyped on the headgear ad, dude. That was it.
new evolution and the reinvention, you know, what's going to be the next era of skating? Because I've talked to some people about this, and the most common counterpoint that's brought up is, well, actually, it's not really that the OGs and the old heads and the legends are hogging the spotlight. It's more to do with the fact that the young guys aren't pulling their weight. There's no like superstars in the way that we have Costin P. Rod and Reynolds and Tony Hawk.
Okay. The first time I watched this, I heard this wrong. I thought he was saying that. I thought that was his take, but he's saying that that is a counter argument made to what he's discussing here. I don't think it's either of these things. I don't think it's because like old heads are milking it, or young skaters aren't pulling their weight. Dude, I simply just kind of think skating is in a fucking point of lacking more broader public interest. And I mean, this, I kind of touched on this in a video I did a couple months ago, but you know, to get a little deeper in it and to unpack it, skating was super big in the early 2000s. It blew up everywhere. It blew up mainstream. It was this giant piece, this giant new exciting piece of pop culture. And I mean, at the time, I didn't, you know, I was like 10 years old. I didn't really understand the difference between a subculture or a counterculture and mainstream pop culture. By that point, skating already kind of wasn't this subculture. I mean, it was, and I still think portions of and parts and sectors of skating are still a subculture, but the entirety of skating isn't a subculture. And I think in the early 2000s is when that started to fade away with the introduction of the internet. I think there is some causation there, but there's also just some correlation, because I mean, the internet I don't think really had the devastating, that might be being hyperbolic, but I don't really think the internet had as much of a devastating impact on skateboarding until like Instagram introduced video to the platform, which was, I think, was in 2013, 2014, like right after Vine came out. I just think that like skateboarding is full of old heads. So it's like, if I was a kid today, I wouldn't look at skateboarding as something that was necessarily cool. I would look at skateboarding as something that like, that's what old heads do. I'm kind of in this, I think, sweet spot with my age. So I feel like I can shed some fucking, how do I say, interesting, unique insight to this sort of conversation, because I mean, I've seen the fads play out. I've seen like the same things like cycle through over again. I mean, at a certain point, you get to that ripe age where like the shit that you're into, all the things that are niche to your generation and your group, are now aged out. And once those things get aged out, they become mainstream to the generation beneath you, in front of you, the younger generation. They become mainstream. A great example is Title Fight. Even in 2018, when Title Fight was touring, I mean, they were big then. Like, I would see like mainstream memes being made about Title Fight by that point. But it's like 2015, 2014, 2013, like Title Fight was still a niche adjacent hardcore band, like a niche emo shoegaze band. And now at this point, it's like you have Billie Eilish using her song, using Title Fight song on Instagram. Like Title Fight is like fucking Deftones now, you know? I still want that reunion. Yeah, I think that this is just the same fucking thing, man. It's not, there isn't that much appeal, especially in this sector here of this list of people up here. Like a kid isn't gonna look at these guys and be like, oh yeah, I wanna skate. Cause I mean, dude, anyone that was fucking older than 35, older than 40, probably older than 30, I was like, I don't really care about your shit. You know, I didn't watch skate videos that came out before I started skating, because I was just like, well, I wasn't there, so it doesn't, you know, whatever. I didn't ever watch those type of videos until like 10 years into skating, when people were like, you got to know your history. I was like, all right, fine.
We don't have those guys anymore. For the record, we do sort of have guys that are adjacent to that. It just doesn't feel like skateboarding is as big as it was, especially in the mainstream this time around, where, you know, obviously Ryan Sheckler had a TV show, Bam had a TV show, Tony Hawk had video games. Like, we do have Nyjah and Yuto. Yuto might be gigantic in Japan, but like in the United States, Nyjah is nowhere near the level that some of these other guys in the past have reached. It's hard to know, because in the world that we live in right now, these guys are absorbing a lot of resources that could be going elsewhere in the industry. You know, we're going to get to a point where skating is going to hit a wall, and you're not going to be able to make Gino push for the next ASICS shoe because he's going to look like a skeleton. He's already doing so little as it is. He's been phoning it in for like a decade. Go look at his Instagram page. Yeah, Gino fucking sucks. Like, who actually likes Gino?
I mean, dude, an entire generation of people like Gino, but that was funny. I'm gonna give you your flowers for that. Man, it's crazy, because I think that this shoe is dope, but it literally looks like a Booznitz. But the Booznitz is dope. So is this shoe. I don't know. I mean, whatever, man. I don't know. Whatever. I get what he's fucking saying. You know, but I think to the bigger point, the bigger issue here is that we don't have like mainstream outside appeal to kids like we had in the early 2000s with Tony Hawk Pro Skater, fucking Jackass and Viva La Bam, Life of Ryan, everything, you know, that was mentioned. And I think a part of the reason that we don't is because that shit was fucking milked dry. It became so watered down. And I think not only did that water skating down, because for those that don't remember, or for those that weren't around then, skating did have a super lull period around 2010, between like 2010 to like 2013. Like there was a big dip, like skate shops were closing everywhere, just like they are right now. Struggling, you know? And I mean, you can argue they've been closing ever since then because of you know, the internet and social media and whatever, but there was a big lull there. big one. That this was around the time Alien Workshop disbanded, and there was a lot of, talk around like, oh my god, is skating gonna die? Is skating gonna die? And then like we got this fucking second wind through social media. But it was different. It wasn't like a mainstream pop culture thing. It was this like weird niche. Not weird, but it's like it was more from a subculture standpoint, from like I think a lot of residual from Supreme kept skating really cool to a lot of kids throughout the 2010s. Because Supreme is also a part of a subculture that was streetwear that I don't really even think exists much anymore.
I gotta correct myself here for those that are gonna come at me in the comments. Another subculture. Supreme was a part of another subculture. Yes, it was originally a skate shop and then simultaneously was a part of the streetwear subculture movement, what have you.
And Supreme got really big. Supreme hit mainstream, bringing skateboarding up again with it. And then you had all these other niche factors going on. And this is when skating started to like fraction off into even more niches. Like this is when like the YouTube skate boom started happening, and that was a whole thing that was separate from the rest of skateboarding. And then you had Instagram. You had these different types of skaters. I mean, really it was just YouTube and Instagram that broke off, that fractioned off into their own separate niches. There was like a clear observation of like who belonged to what.
I think this is also another interesting point of tech companies becoming so big that they're penetrating every single market, every single niche, that like there were discussions around whether or not you're a YouTube skater, Instagram skater, or TikTok skater based off of which platform you decided to try to post your footage to more and or try to make a living from.
But yeah, there's no like giant mainstream appeal like there once was. It's fucking watered down, man. I think skating is just gonna completely correct itself back to like a neutral level for a minute. And I mean, yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get another second boost as soon as like it's been long enough and mainstream pop culture can like pull it in to be like, this is cool. It's gonna have to go through like a recession period, I think. And who knows, maybe I don't know where we are in that period, if we're in the beginning, if we're in the end, but we're clearly in a period where skateboarding is not as interesting, to say the least, to people outside of skateboarding. I was at the fucking skate park like a couple weeks ago with Corey Keene. The park was empty with skateboarders or rollerbladers or scooters. No one there. But there was like 8 kids on those electric dirt bikes. I hate the notion of like when people say this, they like fall into this trope of like, kids are lazy now, kids are entitled, they don't want to work hard. I'm like, dude, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, another good example of why this isn't true, why kids just aren't lazy, is because things like jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and MMA in general are all gaining in popularity and having a similar boom that skating had in the early 2000s. So like that's proof right there that kids just aren't lazy and don't want to go outside and don't want to work hard.
It's not the kids' fault. It's the way that fucking consumerism and pop culture are now influencing kids in their interests through social media. Like gaming's fucking huge. Those Suron bikes are fucking huge. There's other things that kids are getting into that are more interesting to them than something like skating, which has like an old head appeal, image, vibe to it now. Like the Thrasher Hell Ride vibe thing, which is like my generation, is an old head vibe. And that's why I think companies like Sci-Fi and Limousine and kid I recently discovered, I don't remember what, like over the summer, that Evan Wasser kid, that kid's sick. Those are sectors of skating that are still on, that I would argue that are on the subculture side. I've been thinking about this idea about how skateboarding is a clear, perfect case study for what capitalism does and for why the free market can't regulate itself. Skating in the early 2000s was once a self-ran, self-owned industry with all these different shoe brands, all these different deck brands. There was no big sport involvement. Like Nike had already tried in the past and failed twice. And then they came in a third time and were finally successful. I was having a conversation with a libertarian friend of mine about this, and his whole argument for the free market is that the value of the product is going to determine where the customer spends their money. And my argument is, no, that's not true, because if big sport can come into a space like skateboarding and just outmarket all the other companies, because they have more money, they're going to succeed and they're going to dominate. And that's literally exactly what happened to skating. All of the small shoe brands went away. I mean, there's a few still left. We're in this like late stage skateboarding phase. Mainstream needs to get its influence from a cool subculture, and then they pull those ideas into the mainstream, and then they get a broader pool of people, a broader appeal. They pull those people into like whatever the new fucking cool mainstream thing is. In this case, it was skateboarding, and then they sell it to the masses. And then the subculture disappears. The topic of gatekeeping has been a conversation forever in skateboarding, whether gatekeeping is good or gatekeeping is bad. And I think it's both, because we do need gatekeeping, but the right kind of gatekeeping. We don't need to gatekeep out the new kid that wants to learn how to skate. We need to gatekeep out the right people away from skating. It's hard. Who's at fault here? It's not the guy that spent 30 years of his life invested in skating and then gets a corporate job at fucking Vans. He's like, oh my God, I'm working at Vans as a shoe designer. I love skating. Like, this is my life. Like, that to him, that's a dream job. It's not, I think it's safe to say, and maybe everyone agrees, maybe you don't, it's not his fault. This is just the way fucking life is set up. I think this is just a pattern that plays out over time. I don't really think there's anything I don't really think there's much to be done about it. And you know what I mean? Aside from like, yeah, if you like skating, keep skating.
If you touch that mustache one more fucking time.
And I hate when people boil it all down to that. You know, it's like the whole fucking notion of like, keep politics out of skating. But it's like, if you can't explain why, say things like that, or just quick like one-liners, simpleton phrases. If you can't explain what that means, like, don't say it.
This nigga's legendary based on what? What has he done? Who the fuck knows who is outside of the local ghetto community?
You think I'm gonna pretend to like Gino Iannucci?
He's taking a harsh stance against Gino. I wouldn't take that harsh of a stance against him, but I see where he's coming from and what he's saying. It's like, I don't give a fuck about what World Industry was before everyone split away and like went to girl. It's like, I don't give a fuck about that. I wasn't there. You know what I mean? And there's skaters from that era that like, people 10 years older than me will name drop, and I'm like, I wasn't there. I don't really give a fuck. So, I mean, I feel like that's Joe's take on this. Why would he? He's not. This isn't his fucking shit.
These guys are going to either drop dead or be so obviously old that it's going to be just completely ludicrous that you would try to associate them with an action sport. People are so nostalgic and fearful of the current moment. They want to rewind. They want to watch old movies, and if they're not, and you can't make any money if you're a studio from people watching old movies, so you just remake the old movies again. We're seeing that in skateboarding with video game re-releases, shoe re-releases, redesigns, rehashes. Why is it that people that work at these major shoe brands who make massive decisions in skateboarding, I mean, these are the shoes that we wear, these are the guys that decide what comes out and what is made, you're asking, why do they keep providing so much cultural purchase to these old guys? And I think from what I understand, a lot of these guys that work at these shoe brands, first of all, they're terrified of making a mistake because it's hard to get one of these jobs in skateboarding. It's like a cushy corporate gig. Nobody wants to give that up, so they're playing it safe. Secondly, I think that because these are older guys.
Also, this is just the state of fucking everything right now. Everything is just fucking nostalgia. Like, it's not just skating. Everything is just it's like fucking nostalgia, fucking trash. It's all cash grab, you know?
Go back to the old shit. This seems like a cash grab.
Guys, and they want to celebrate and recognize the guys that they grew up watching. Like, they're picking their faves to give shoes to. I think that combination of things is why we're seeing skateboarding having such massive dinosaur representation.
It's almost like skating has overstayed its welcome in mainstream popularity. Skating had a period where there were sectors of companies that made skate shoes specifically for department stores. Vans did it, Nike did it. What was the other one? Airwalk. That was it. Airwalk. And they were just to go there. I don't think this needs to be the entirety of the market in skating. We don't just need like constant re-releases and fucking reissues and all this shit. Here's the thing, and this is to the later point in the slap articles. We're gonna go over there in a second, but it's like, dude, people who are 40 when they were 20, when this was the big shoe, they have money now. If they have like a good job, they're gonna buy this shit as like they're being sold the nostalgia. You know what I mean? Those are the people spending money and bringing money into skating. It's like, it's not the 20-year-old kid, because like, dude, fuck. We all know how hard it is to like buy fucking skate shit when you're a kid. Okay, so the backstory here. The reason why I typed in Joa's name here on Slack is because I've had several conversations of people who have asked me what I think about Joa's video. Old heads who work up in skating and who strongly disagree with everything he said, you know, as they always do, or as they would, or as I would assume they would. Yeah, I wanted to see what people were saying about that specific incident. So 2 comments here. These are the ones that really stuck out to me. There's 2 right here. I am biased because I like Gino, but I think adding him on ASICs isn't that hard to comprehend. Joa is a different age demographic, so I get it, but aging skaters like myself enjoy seeing our pros we grew up with still sell product. Right, I think a lot of Joa's take here, which I get it. I feel like I had the same takes. Those types of takes are limited to your demographic. They're limited to when you started something. No different than, say, Ray Barbie, Cardiel. See, like, there's a perfect example. Like, Cardiel, legend, right? He gets his flowers. We all love him. He's that fucking guy. But, like, he didn't have an impact on me personally at all. Like, I didn't like, care about him, you know? And that's not to say that I, like, didn't not like John Cardiel, but like as a kid, it didn't mean anything to me because he wasn't skating anymore by the time I started skating. His back was already broken. Jason Dill, Carol, etc. We don't expect prime footage or any footage anymore, but we still like seeing their names on product and at skate shops until our generation dies. Then I can see where you can gripe and bitch about this, but still there is a market for it. I mean, yeah, there is a market for it because those are the people that are spending their money, which I think is what this guy goes on to say. This is it though. It's exactly why I previously mentioned guys like Gino and Reynolds aren't as much of the problem, but actually probably helping retain a bunch of older skater customers who still have money to spend. Now see, the brands are doing that. They know what they're doing by keeping guys like Reynolds around, because guys like me and older are gonna spend money on shit like this. The argument that people want his name on product is for sure a valid one. No one wants to feel alienated from a culture they spent their entire lives a part of, and especially no older person wants to feel like they're too old, out of touch, or embarrassed to take part in an activity that's always been painted as a young person's thing. Okay, true, we don't, but this is the natural order of things. And I think on one hand, I agree with this. I mean, there's nothing really to agree or disagree with, but I think it's more of an internal conflict of being like, okay, yeah, I don't want to be pushed out of the thing that I spent my entire life dedicating to, but also at the same time, like, do you want to be Steve Buscemi meme? No, I don't. Nobody wants to be the guy in his basement when he's 40 playing in a rock band in a genre that hasn't been relevant in 15 years, trying to still make it. I mean, I guess if he just waits another 5, it'll come full circle, you know, because that's how these fucking marketing campaigns work, and that's how trends work and all that shit, you know. I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds of that shit, but it's like, it's so much to unpack, but that is all marketing. You think your ideas are your own. They're not. Like, the shit that you think is cool is because a brand, like, kind of forced that onto you. And that's not me saying that, like, oh, you're bad, you should be more media literate at 12 years old. That's me just saying, like, this is the world we live in. It's as if people think representation is whack and unnecessary, or that these dudes are literally stealing a living straight out of some kid's pocket. Yeah, I mean, they're not. I mean, yeah, obviously once you get older and you have more money, and if you're in a higher position, and especially if you're somebody like Reynolds, you do have a lot of pull and you do have a lot of influence. So I do think there is more responsibility that you have than obviously a teenager skating. So that is something to keep in mind. I do agree that there isn't being directly stolen out of kids' pockets, but I will say that does kind of tie back into what I was saying about maybe taking up space on the cover for somebody else, younger, newer, etc. Also, like, kids skate different now. The way skating literally looks physically on a skateboard is different. It was the same for like 20 fucking years, and it progressed into a direction until we outgrew it physically. Because it's like, okay, first of all, like, how much more interesting is it for you to grind a 50-foot handrail versus a 100-foot handrail? To me, I'm just kind of like, that's not that much different than a 50-foot one. Like, yeah, it's double the length, but at a certain point, it's like, you're just riding on the rail. And this is coming from a guy who loves handrail skating. Shock horror to some people, these huge footwear companies know a thing or two. They've worked out exactly how much these guys and the markets they bring in are worth to them. They probably offered to pay them less. This isn't their first rodeo. The budget set aside to pay these guys isn't meant to come from 10 to 20-year-old sales anyway. That's what they've got Jamie Foy and Frankie Villani for. And if the promotion and sales for those guys aren't cutting the mustard, then that's arguably another topic. Multiple demographics can coexist and be catered for accordingly. Big brands aren't able to leave money on the table from an established older market. Acting like it's either Gino or some new kid is just lazy scapegoating. Skateboard media just needs to work out how to put the new generation on in a way that's very inspiring to young people, or cater to the older market and cater to the market, to the older market at the same time. Jesus Christ. It's probably not that hard of a nut to crack, but the people running big skateboarding establishments are fried, out of touch, and sleepwalking at the wheel. So yeah, I mean, there's a hyperbole here at the end with, fried. Like, maybe it's not hyperbole. Yes, people are fried, but it's like, you also got to remember, like, this is a bunch of skaters trying to figure out how to do business that also, like, are older, that, like, refuse to keep up with the times, and they're people that kind of just think that their shit is gonna be the cool shit forever, which it's like, that's delusional, for sure, 100%. I think the older generations should be holding space for kids to allow them, like, the space to make a brand, or to, like, do what they want within skating. But, like, those younger kids, the younger generation is going to buy from the younger generation, unless it's like, I think Baker and Reynolds are the exception to this, because somehow Baker's been able to become a timeless brand and maintain relevance, while all the other ones there was so many big powerhouses that just fell away, within the last 20 years. Girl's not what it used to be. Alien Workshop's gone. Habitat was another one that was, like, crazy sick. That's gone. Baker has kind of lasted the test of time. Acting like it's either Gino or some new kid is just lazy scapegoating. Yeah, I agree. It's you're trying to, like, oversimplify the argument and just, like, kind of reduce it to, like, here's the answer, when it's not that. I hate to be the guy that fucking keeps saying this, but dude, this is just fucking late stage capitalism bullshit. This is skateboarding. Like, this is a fucking toy. This is a thing we do for fun. There's nothing like the value, and I will argue in skating's favor, like, the value that you are adding to someone, like, to a person, is like what you learn from skating, and, like, what can be created through it. Community, freedom, self-expression, learning resilience and not to give up. So, like, you have all those things that skating teaches you, which is amazing. It's like, it's made all of us who we are. The point that I never fully rounded back to on this was that while those things all might make you a better person, therefore making you a better member of society, outside of that, skating doesn't add much value, which you can argue that isn't not any value, because if you're making people better for society, then sure, yeah, that's a lot of value. But, like, this is skateboarding. We're not solving cancer. This is the equivalent of football on a niche level. And here's the second comment that I really liked. From my reference, at least where I am, I feel like skateboarding is dying down because the younger generation doesn't give a shit, relatively, and so companies are still marketing to the old market. So I agree with this statement, and I think at first read, people are going to read this and be like, he's shitting on the younger generation. I don't think that's it. I think the younger generation just literally, like I said earlier, isn't interested in an old head activity. Why would they be? So they're finding other, like, subcultures to be a part of, and subcultures, like, they barely exist anymore because the internet moves so fast that, like, pop culture and big corporations just sweep them up as soon as they become anything at all. So it's like, okay, now subculture's dead. That's not cool anymore. And, like, that's a whole nother issue in and of itself, for the fact that it's like, a lot of subcultures just thrive on this notion of like, oh, it's being cool and we do it because nobody else does, and then once everyone else starts doing it, then you stop doing it. It's like the contrarian shit, you know. Obviously that's not the ethos of all subcultures, you know, but I feel like that is a big portion of things that could end up becoming subcultures, and they never make it to subculture level because people quit beforehand. It's like, I feel like that kind of happened to scootering. Like, why didn't scootering ever take off? Because the kids were there. I also don't blame the younger generation. It's a different time. It's so much harder to stand out on social media and constant daily video releases when everything was on VHS, DVD, people's parts were on repeat for years. Yeah, this is the whole social media conversation. When I was young, there were tons of skate crews all putting out videos, holding events, street spots, always had a gathering. Now I barely see that with the younger generation. My reference is Toronto, by the way. I mean, dude, I see it here in LA. There is not, like, skate parks are empty. I don't see, like, other people at spots nearly as much. And if I do, they're all my age. And chances are, like, I've skated with them in the past already, you know? I just think it was more exciting to be a skater in the early 2000s, and it was way easier to create a star. Yeah, it was right before social media. Now everyone can have their 15 minutes of fame and do their thing. I still follow so much skateboarding, but a lot of it is on Instagram, and half skaters I don't even know can count on the times. Okay, yeah, you can't blame the older generation for the lack of enthusiasm and buying power of the younger generation. That being said, I agree with a lot of his takes in the videos. Yeah, this last line, dude. You can't blame the older generation for the lack of enthusiasm and buying power of the younger generation. This is just like a byproduct of skating as a subculture and counterculture being milked dry by big sport. This is what fucking happens when they fucking enter, you know? And I used to say, like, you know, because right when Nike came in, it was all like, fuck Nike, nobody likes Nike. And then for a while, you know, everyone got used to Nike and everyone was okay with it. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, Nike actually keeps my shop in business. And like, that's great. You know, but like, these are the broader effects of something like that. Like, that's how those effects change the entirety of something like skateboarding. And what I said earlier too about skating just looking entirely different than what it did 20 years ago, I feel like is a whole other conversation to get into that maybe I'll make a video about. But yeah, I think it's just too much to get into right now, and I've already been recording now for what, fucking 50 minutes. Like I said, I know this video was made like a month and a half ago now, and I hope that I was able to add enough substance to this conversation to where it just wasn't redundant and, you know, whatever.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.